Okay, recording. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special episode of Hinterlands Media One Shot.
We're not doing some dead air at the beginning so you can take out the noise?
No, we're not doing dead air. What are you talking about?
Oh, you're funny.
I am funny. I'll just edit that dead air out, and people listening will be confused, and we'll make sure the audio is beautiful, and we'll introduce the topic, which we're doing a special, ladies and gentlemen, for 9/11, which happens tomorrow, because we need to release an episode for our adoring fans, because we're really bad at releasing episodes.
Well, you've been busy, and yeah.
So we're going to do a special on 9/11, which is tomorrow.
You just said that?
Unless you live under a rock, 9/11, we're speaking of September the 11th, 2001, when the World Trade Center collapsed.
What are you looking at me for? This is all you. I was too young to really know what was going on.
Well, this is where normally people would say, from two airplanes that collided with the Twin Towers that were piloted by evil Muslim Saudi Arabian fellas who hijacked them with box cutters and flew them right into the towers and took them down. That's what people would normally say. But I'm not gonna say that, because that's all in question. It's all in the air. That's all in the official report, which is a big, huge, fat document full of lies.
Well, the official report has a lot of stuff that's missing that you wouldn't know unless you ever looked into it. I only ever heard the skim off the top official report growing up, and I didn't care to look into it until I married a conspiracy theorist and spent time with his weird roommate.
Well, we're both kind of nutcases. I can't remember if he got me into it or if I got him into it.
I thought Ryan was a weird conspiracy theorist when I met you. Yes.
And then you found out I was too?
Yeah. Not as crazy as Ryan. Hi, Ryan.
I don't think he listens to the show.
Well, if he does, then it's not going to be a surprise, because I'm pretty sure he knows I think that.
I'll tell him he's in this one. I'll tell him he needs to listen to this one, because it's the 9/11 episode.
Regardless, I didn't know until just a few years ago that there were mass drills going on the day of 9/11. And so when people started freaking out about hijacking, they didn't know if it was real or part of the drill.
Yep. There's always drills. There's always drills that happen right around whatever big event.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. And I don't think it's because there's always drills going on. I mean, yes, there's probably a lot of drills that go on, but there's always with big events where people die, in big air quotes, there always seems to be, not to say nobody died in 9/11, I'll never deny that, tons of people died in that event, but there always seems to be drills that have to do with the event, which confuse people. Well,
I'm going to tell you, I don't know if I told you this, I've started taking screenshots every time I see in the news that there will be a drill somewhere. In fact, there was going to be a mass casualty drill here in town.
Oh, I know. I wonder how that went.
I don't know.
It was like a big deal. There were announcements all over the place.
Yeah, but I was thinking, like, if a few days after this, in the news...
There's some sort of shooting and...
Good job.
Well, I'll bleep it out.
Yeah. Then, I can have this as evidence that, no, there was supposed to be a mass casualty drill.
Yeah.
The day of the Parkland, there was a drill.
I know, I was going to mention that. Yeah, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Marjorie
Stoneman Douglas High, right?
Yeah, I don't know. The name of that high school is a mouthful. Anyway, everyone listening knows what we mean. Yeah, there was interviews of high school students there who were like, yeah, the other day we had a shooter drill where we all hid under desks and got in closets and whatnot, and so when this happened, it was just rote. We just did our thing.
Well, and don't forget the smiling, laughing girl talking about hanging out with the shooter.
Yeah, and someone else was like talking about how there was more than one shooter and they were both in body armor. Like,
that was a teacher
military issue.
That the guy was in body armor.
Like SWAT gear.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about...
Yeah, that's another that's a different can of worms.
We were just talking about drills.
Yeah, 9/11 they had scrambled all their jets, all their scrambled jets, which are put into place specifically. They have people on call specifically to run to these jets, jump in them, take off, and take down people who are trying to damage America's infrastructure with whatever weaponry. Mm-hmm. These guys are trained for that. That's what they do. They were all gone. They were all flying to Montana or whatever.
Alaska, weren't they?
No, they were flying to Montana.
Okay, well, they were very far away.
Right. Montana's not close to Washington, D.C. It's halfway across the country. The contiguous United States. Alaska's something
People
else.
think Alaska's part of Canada.
It is part of Canada.
No, it isn't.
Oh, we love Canada. Anyway, yeah, they were gone. You can look at graphics of that show where the planes were, all the scramble jets, and they weren't anywhere nearby. It took them forever. Much longer than it should have taken them to get back. They had to call them back. Actually, I seem to recall, and a lot of this is going off memory. We didn't do hardly any research.
It's been a few years since we looked into this specifically. We were just looking at the most recent stuff.
Yeah, and since it's tomorrow, and we'll get to that.
We will do a more thought-through, researched episode
9/11 is there's so many hours of content in 9/11. It's absurd. There's so many inconsistencies and weird things that go on.
Maybe you should get Ryan to do an episode with you.
Yeah, well, I did mention that to him at one point, and he was like, I wouldn't know what to say. He got all sheepish, like he has no idea, but the dude he's researched enough. He could talk at length on this topic. It's funny, I think people are mic shy. They get scared of being in front of a mic. You mentioned coming on a podcast and they get all sheepish.
Call him on the phone, hit record. And
yeah, secret interview.
Just make sure he's in a state where you can record without being liable.
Yeah, I'll have to of course, the jig is up if I tell him to listen to this podcast. He's going to be on to me.
All right.
Anyway, what were we talking about?
We were talking about how there was a big drill.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get back in time.
Yeah, you can look at... I feel like I recall hearing that the jets that were supposed to be there were so far away that they had to enlist different jets from... the military officials who are in control of making sure jets are scrambled to take out terrorists who hijack planes, because there's contingency plans in place for everything. They've covered everything. They have military eggheads who sit at computers and think tanks who think up contingency plans to cover all scenarios.
You mean people like me who think of the worst possible scenario to the tiniest thing?
Right, they have people just like you who get paid a lot to sit at a computer and figure out all the random contingencies.
Well, why don't I have that job?
Well, maybe you should. We should fly to DC and you can get a job with the military. Anyway, and so they already had a plan in place to get jets in the air to protect whatever needed protecting from this scenario, the hijacked planes, in big air quotes, because that's still questionable. But there weren't any, so they ended up calling the nearest place that would have them, and they didn't have them. They didn't have the jets available. Mm-hmm. So they called the next place. They made 4 different phone calls to 4 different military bases, and each call was further east from DC and New York City, the Eastern Seaboard city centers. Mm-hmm. It was further east, and I feel like Montana was the one that they ended up landing on that had the jets available, and they had to fly them all the way from Montana into DC, and by then it was too late.
I don't recall any of that. I just knew that there was a massive drill that they couldn't track anyone down.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And I remember a recording of the call. Is this real world or? Right,
a lot of people who got the call, the air traffic controllers, they're like, "Oh, this is another drill." You know, they didn't believe that it was a real event because they had just done a drill the day before, and it was. I don't know about this, but I can definitely foresee. I can assume that it was the sort of drill that they don't tell you they're going to have. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like they probably had those sorts of drills where in my previous place of work, I never experienced it, but I have heard of people who, it was years ago, not during my time there in the 80s and maybe the 70s, but there were certain officials who would just like start ringing the bells at like midnight to do a drill. People would have to hop to as if it was a real emergency. And I feel like it's even happened where they didn't know if it was an emergency or not. They like they thought it was an emergency because the bells went off, and they did their thing.
Well, I can imagine a bunch of customers would be mad.
Yes. And maybe it was the middle of the day too. Probably not in the middle of the night, but I've heard of that happening where they didn't tell anyone, and they just and then he evaluated them later. They told them later that it was a drill, which is an effective way to drill because you can evaluate how good your personnel is, how good your procedure is, but it's probably not so great when it comes to planes flying into buildings because then people will be like, oh, it's a drill. You don't have to be super strict. And, oh, we just did a drill yesterday. Are you sure this is a real thing? And
now you can't even take batteries through TSA.
Oh, I know. Yeah, now they're telling you. Just yesterday, they asked me, oh, you have any lithium batteries in your bags? I was like, I've got an Xbox in my bag. It probably has a lithium battery in it, like a little tiny one, for the clock, the internal clock or something. They're like, oh no, if it's loose. No, there's no batteries in there. Like, what's your deal? What is up with flying? Since 2001, everyone who flew before 2001 remembers it as the glory days of flying because
I've heard stories.
Walk on a plane with your pocket knife on your hip. I did it. Years ago, I flew with a pocket knife. Just, no big deal.
Couldn't you even fly with, like, a handgun? Like, if you were...
Well, I don't know. I was really young.
I think cops could. I'm not certain if you could because, well, you remember in Die Hard, he gets off the plane, somebody sees his handgun, and he says, it's okay, I'm a cop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if that was a real thing or if that was just for the movie. But I feel like I've heard stories, of people in Southeast Alaska getting on the plane with their rifle and then getting off.
Yeah.
My grandma...
And now in order to fly with a plane, you have to have it in like a polycarbonate case with 2 locks. That's why every case you buy with a new gun has 2 holes, like 2 spots for padlocks.
Well, the whole thing about liquids now. It might have been before I was born, but I think it was when I was really young. My grandma got stuck in a plane that had to fly over my hometown with a bucket full of clams and water. And she ended up landing in SeaTac with a bucket of clams. Wow. Yeah.
That's amazing. And kind of gross. Well, you've heard of the absurdity, some of the absurdities of their rules, right?
Yes, you'd have to be in a stable environment with, like, certain conditions in order to mix these 2 chemicals quite perfectly in order to maybe make an explosive.
Right. Well, not only that, but also you can... I'm talking about the more humorous side of it is you can... How does that go? You're not allowed to bring... You're not allowed to bring a container of cherry pie filling because it's considered liquid, but you can bring a cherry pie.
I don't think you can.
Full of cherry pie filling. It's either that or it's the reverse of that. Like, you can't bring a cherry pie, but you can bring a container of cherry pie filling. It's one or the other.
I think it must be that because I remember...
why not? What is a pie but a container of cherry pie filling?
No, I don't know. I recall... Mark Stein, I think last year around Thanksgiving or something, making a joke about Grandma bringing a pumpkin pie through TSA or something.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm pretty sure you can't actually.
You're not allowed to bring anything bigger than like 3 ounces, but you can bring 12 bottles that are 3 ounces each. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of the same liquid.
Well, and TSA too is, a lot of them, you don't know if they got that job because they couldn't do anything else or they want to pat down little kids. And then you've got the guy in that video that I think everyone's seen at this point, just like waving his arms up and down, not even touching somebody, and then waving them through.
Oh, I know. That video is hilarious.
And then you've got the people like, your bag goes off, oh, you got something in there, they search for 5 minutes, can't find anything, and then this actually happened to one of my sisters. She said, oh, I think my nail clippers are in there. TSA looked, couldn't find it. Oh, whatever, just go ahead. She reached into her bag and pulled them right out as soon as she got through.
I had them take my toenail clippers from me in like 2002 or 3, like shortly after 2001. Mm-hmm. I was traveling for some reason, I don't recall, but my toenail clippers had a little tiny, it must have been like a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch blade. Mm-hmm. A little like 1/2 inch blade to cut calluses off or something, a toenail trimmer.
Those things don't do anything.
No, it's. You think I can hijack a plane with a quarter inch blade? You never know.
You might have gone to the bathroom and sharpened it on the sink or something.
It's not even long enough to really cause any major arterial damage to anyone.
Well, you never know. You might just find somebody's femoral artery.
I just might. Yeah. Yeah, it's absurd. TSA is such a farce, and you can almost... Did TSA even exist before?
I was young.
I feel like the organization itself exists because of 9/11.
I don't know. We'd have to look
I'd have to look that one up. I'm not sure. If it did exist before then, it was super, super lax. But I feel like it exists because, as a direct result of 9/11, they formed the TSA. But I would have to look it up, and I'm too lazy to look it up right now.
I grew up in a town with an airport so small that... one time I came back from down south, there was this tourist behind me who just came up to fish or something. He looked out the window like, that's an airport? It's literally one building. You don't have a conveyor. They might have updated it. I haven't been home in like 10 years. But all they have is like this door that opens and they shove the luggage through and it comes down this slide and they close the door again.
Yeah.
It's so
manual
small,
operated.
But you've gotta have TSA, so you go through the thing.
I know.
And it's just, come on, everybody knows everybody. You all grew up with each other and went to high school, and just, my parents are so ticked. And one of my uncles apparently was so fed up with the TSA machines here in town where we live that he bought a ferry ticket to come home. He would not do it again.
That's pretty wild.
And I've heard that again and again about the machines here in town, is that men have a problem with the machine sensing something in their private area.
Oh, yeah.
It gets set off every single time, and they have to get a pat down, which is why they went through the machine, so they wouldn't have to get the pat down.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid.
And I have a special hatred for TSA.
I saw these guys next to me the other day when I was traveling. They had the little TSA pre-check thing. Mm-hmm. You pay $70, they give you a blue card, and that allows you to do 2 things: keep your belt and your jacket and your shoes on, and not get your electronics out of your bag. That's it.
You can't go...
And you get to go through the metal detector instead of the whoop-de-doo thing.
I think that would be worth it.
I think it's just a huge cash grab.
Well, it is.
That's all it is. Like, we make your life miserable so that we can get $70 more out of you.
Yeah, well...
You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're taking your shoes off, you're taking your belt off, you're taking your jacket off, you're taking everything that is cell phone or bigger out of your bag. That includes a Kindle, your battery bank, your laptop, your cell phone, any hard drives because they're cell phone shaped. Those all come out of your bag, which, yes, for anyone wondering, I carry a lot of electronics with me when I travel because I'm afraid of getting bored. Well, that's in my check bag, so who cares? Yeah. And it's a beater anyway, so I don't care what happens to it. And your snacks. They want all your food out of your bag, which apparently isn't I looked it up. It's not an official rule. Mm-hmm. It's a strong suggestion. So it's basically up to each individual division, like airport division of TSA, whether they want to ask plane passengers, to take their snacks out of their bags. So a lot of them have just taken it as the rule. Mm-hmm. Because if they don't ask, then it's possible that they're going to have to through their machine anyway. If the machine detects something weird that looks like your sunflower seeds or whatever, they're going to have to get it out anyway. Mm-hmm. And that'll slow people down. So that's the thought behind that. Like, if they're going to ask you anyway, it'll slow the line down. So they're going to ask you beforehand, before you even get in the line, they're going to ask you, so you can be more efficient and prep for it. Mm-hmm. That's the reasoning there. So they just take it as a gospel rule now. Like, you have to do it now. So now it's your snacks too.
Well, everybody hates TSA, but I just have a bad experience with TSA. They're just such rude people.
Everybody has bad experiences. Nobody has good experiences with them. No one.
But you remember that show we watched, Lie to Me, a while ago? That woman who gets recruited, the witch with the strong bee? That's exactly what every TSA agent I've ever dealt with has been like.
Yeah.
Just real bitchy and unlikable.
You don't travel much. I see plenty of them who are fine. They just do their jobs. It doesn't matter. It's just the job to them. They're usually not that militant. If you step over the line, they go, "Don't step over the line."
Really?
Yeah, that's how a lot of them act.
You recall that one woman?
Well, she was working with a huge crowd, and you stepped over the line. You know what? You take great offense at that particular situation, and you have this look on your face that how dare you defend that woman, but you stepped over the line, and she had to get you back behind the line.
Literally, there was no line.
I recall a line.
No, there was, and I wasn't over. I took half a step forward because the guy in front of me stepped forward, and this big Nigerian woman, clearly just from Nigeria, according to her accent, said, "Ma'am, back off." Like,
hey, watch the levels on the audio. You're getting excited.
Well, I'm doing what she did. She yelled at me like that in front of the whole airport.
You stepped forward. You weren't supposed to.
Anyway, I'm just saying, they got stormtrooper syndrome.
Yeah, they do. They have. They seem to have often very swollen heads. And anybody who's listening to this who's
works for TSA,
conceivably in TSA,
we don't hate you if you're not a psycho.
Right. We don't hate you individually. We kind of just hate the organization and the people it often attracts. Yes.
You worked with a guy who tried to get hired with TSA and he didn't pass the psych eval.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, they said he didn't pass because of the psych eval, which is funny because he seemed like a normal dude. Granted, I also worked with a woman, not in real near proximity. She was involved nearby, who ended up, I think she got fired. She ended up working for TSA here in town later on, and she's a terrible employee, just the worst. It's no wonder she got fired, and then she ends up at TSA. So they're not real discerning. We called her Snaggletooth. She's not an attractive woman. Anyway,
how sexist of you.
She's her attitude and demeanor and her face were all unattractive.
Anyway, we've
all right.
Gone off.
Yes. Back now, we're ranting about TSA.
We do,
and airports,
and get back to our point eventually.
Yeah. So back to the point. Let's get back to the point. So this episode is inspired by a very recent report, which apparently had to do with Alaska, and I didn't know this. It's my understanding. Wow, I almost dropped that. It's my understanding that independent researchers had commissioned a study through the University of Fairbanks to look at World Trade Center Building 7. And specifically to find out whether fire really took that building down. Because that's the official story. In the 9/11 Commission report, it says Building 7 was taken down by spreading fire that was caused by debris that was thrown off from the other two buildings collapsing.
And I had never heard that.
Yeah, that was the story. It was weakened by fire.
But it had only been burning since...
It had burned 4 or 5 hours.
9 in the morning.
Right. So the other two buildings came down. I'm not real precise. You just saw the thing. Maybe you know better than me.
I just heard it's been burning since 9 in the morning.
I'm pretty sure it burned for burned.
Well, it was still daylight when it came down.
For 5 hours. Yeah, it was 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
When it came down.
And I was watching a compilation of different views on it. And one of them, it's all just straight from news agencies. One of the shots is these guys very calmly walking away from the building. Yeah, I want to clear back. It's about to blow up.
Yeah.
Like, literally, you hear those words.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And it does look like a controlled demolition.
It looks just like one. All you gotta do is look up controlled demolitions, watch 20 of those videos of other buildings, and then watch it. Oh, it looks like a controlled demolition. Any bonehead can look at it and say, oh, it looks like what it is.
I could see it eventually coming down with fire, but not in a single day.
Well, I've heard over and over that it's the only building in history to come down by fire, if that's the truth. That's only steel-framed high-rise building. Let's quantify that there.
One of those newsreels said something about how it was the first building in history to be brought down by fire.
Well, that's not true. They needed to be more precise. Buildings come down by fire all the time.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah. He's talking about steel-framed high-rise buildings. Yeah, they don't come down by fire. They're steel-framed. The fires don't get hot enough to melt that much steel and weaken that much concrete.
Well, not in just a couple hours.
They don't anyway. There have been high-rise buildings that have completely torched and they were still standing. But it's because the flame itself doesn't get hot enough. Like, steel takes really high temp to melt.
Well, I understand
and
that, but
natural fire, like wildfire in a building, doesn't get hot enough.
It can't just keep getting hotter and hotter
No,
as it goes?
No, there's a limit. There's an upper limit to the heat unless you apply specific gases under forced gases. That's how they can melt steel, is with like forced gas and controlled environments and pressure and things of that nature. They can get hotter. But natural fires, as it were, like if you just touch a building up, it only gets to a certain limit. And then it doesn't exceed that limit. And it's not hot enough to... I know I'm gesturing up into the air to make my point. It doesn't get hot enough to melt steel, from what I understand. And that's why it's such a farce. And any engineer in the world who has anything to do with building structural safety can go, that's a big fat lie. And I'm sure that's part of the reason 9/11 became such a big deal. You know, the conspiracy, with big air quotes, became such a big topic shortly thereafter because these things don't make sense to people who know. Yeah. And I'm just a bonehead, and it makes sense to me that it wasn't fire that took that building down.
Well, it didn't look like a building being brought down by a fire, but I thought I'd heard at one point that one of those buildings was condemned, and you said it wasn't that it was condemned; it was that it had to have the asbestos removed.
Right. Possibly all three buildings that came down. I don't recall about World Trade Center 7, but most certainly the two towers. I don't remember the numbers, but the Twin Towers were both full of asbestos. They were built in the 70s.
Which is why there are lawsuits now, yes?
Yeah. I'm not sure against who, from who, but a lot of people who lived in New York in 2001, they're all suffering. A lot of people have died from cancer since then, as a direct result of this event. The asbestos abatement for those two buildings would have cost an extraordinary amount, almost to the point of being impossible to afford. It's like that expensive because they're so big. You know, they're so tall and there's so much asbestos in them. Asbestos abatement is just an insanely expensive process. It's very, very labor intensive. It requires really specialized gear by the people who are doing it. It's a big, big deal. And for buildings like that, it's just an astronomical undertaking.
How is asbestos ever even used?
It's got really good insulating properties, and it has really good, it's really good fire retardant, ironically enough. Yeah, it resists heat really well. That's why they used to use it in the brake pads. In cars, they used to use it in brake pads. So any vintage car has asbestos brake pads if they're original.
Like uranium and smoke detectors?
Well, that might still be used, actually.
Really? I thought they stopped doing that after somebody bought like 100.
Oh, maybe they did. Yeah. I remember the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, old cars had asbestos in the brake pads because it dissipates heat really well. And that's why they still use not asbestos, but that's why this pipes on stoves, it's called metalbestos, because it has to do with the fiberglass in it. Dissipates heat well. Or it insulates well, rather. So anyway, little personal anecdote about 9/11. This is my personal story. I'm sure I've told you. I met the guy who owned the buildings when they came down, personally.
Really? I remember that.
Yeah, I met him down at the dock in town here. I was walking with a group of people down at the far harbor, and we're walking along, and there's this beautiful luxury yacht, as you see all summer long, these beautiful yachts down at the dock, and there's this elderly dude walking with his wife, and this was in 2007?
Well, we met in 2011, so just count back.
Well, it was before you and I met.
Yeah.
2007 or 8, something like that. We were walking, it was late, it was like 7 or 8. There was like 4 of us, and we started talking to this guy and his wife, and he actually brought up 9/11, which was funny. Yeah, the conversation, I forget what it was about, but he brought 9/11 up, and he's like, yeah, it was a really terrible thing that happened. And the whole time I'm thinking, this guy seems a little familiar. I'm not sure why. I couldn't pin it. And then it was a little bit of a bummer. In fact, later on, I told Ryan who he was. His name is Larry Silverstein. I met Larry Silverstein. And he's famous for being, if you go on YouTube and look up Pull It Larry, he comes up. An interview with him comes up because they're talking to him. He was the guy who had the lease. He owned the lease on all the buildings that came down. Very, very wealthy real estate guy in New York City. And he's on camera saying that there were work crews in Building 7, and it came down, the communication came down to him that they decided that they were just going to pull it. Which is apparently industry jargon in demolitions for, we're going to take the building down.
Okay, then maybe that's what I thought. Maybe that's what I heard.
Okay. Yeah, there's an interview out there with him saying that. So they call him Pull It Larry. And so I didn't even recognize him when I was down there on the dock talking to him. But later on, I had this brainwave, and I was like, oh my word, I can't believe I met that guy. And I told Ryan, and he's like, you should have pushed him off the dock.
Ugh, Ryan.
That guy's totally evil. He's so corrupt. Because what happened was, he got an enormous payout, an insurance payout, because his, 6 months prior to the event, and this is all part of it's true, but it's all feeds into the conspiracy. 6 months prior, he got his insurance rewritten. The bylines and the contract of his insurance on the buildings rewritten to include terrorist attacks. And then when 2 of the buildings came down, he tried to get a double payment. He tried to get paid twice. So it was like over $1 billion from his insurance. He tried to get double that. So he's trying to gouge the insurance company into paying him double. This is the guy who would have had to pay for the abatement.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah, so who had motive to get these towers taken out of there? The guy that got paid over $1 billion for them getting taken out. A bunch of people got cancer, 3,000 people died, on and on. This guy made out like peanut and butter. Just got his money, skipped town, bought a yacht, and sailed to Alaska. You know what I mean? It's wild.
So, to tie this back into TSA a little bit, do you think that all of this, from a conspiracy point of view, was planned to take away more Americans' freedoms? Or to get us used to being, treated like cattle?
I think
a
that...
little bit more, or just a happy byproduct for the government?
I'm not sure if that was part of the original plan. I think it feels more likely that's just a happy accident that they could... It's not even a happy accident. It's just a tertiary benefit that they molded out of it. In the face of disaster, you got to take all the good things you can get. You know what I mean? What's that famous line about disasters?
Never let a disaster go to waste.
Right, exactly. Who said that?
It's really familiar. I don't remember who.
Yeah.
No, a good tragedy go to waste.
Yeah.
It's something to that effect.
Anyway, it's true. Like, bad things happened. Now they have more control of the people through TSA and control of travel and commerce and moving around.
Well, and I'm going to give you a second to cut this if you want to, but we've talked about the fact that it seems to be moving in the direction that if you aren't fully vaccinated with proof of full vaccination, including adult scheduled vaccinations, you might not be able to travel by airplane in the future.
Oh, yeah. Well, also, they're forcing the Real ID on people now.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to fly anywhere.
I got my yellow star.
On a commercial.
Literally. It is yellow star on your ID.
But it's a pentagram, not a hexagram, so it's not quite a Jewish Star of David, but close, right? It's just missing 1 point.
It's stupid. I had to bring a Ziploc baggie of everything proving who I am down there. And I wasn't the only one. Like, there was a woman sitting next to me. She had a Ziploc baggie full of everything.
And I couldn't prove who I was because I didn't have any documents that I had.
Because it was...
I didn't have any bills that I had paid in the past 90 days with me.
Yeah, it was just 1 month too old.
Yeah. Was that what happened? One of my bills?
Yeah, remember you said that your bill was just
such
too
garbage,
old.
yeah.
And I told the guy there, like, I brought everything but my vial of blood. He didn't have a sense of humor about it. At all. But... I'm,
I think it's a funny joke. Good job.
Thank you. They've been talking in recent years about putting up, security checkpoints outside of clubs, auditoriums, stuff like that. You gotta wonder if at a certain point in big cities, you're just gonna have to go through a security checkpoint, like, every mile or so?
Yeah, well, no, they're just gonna put cameras up everywhere like London. Did you see that list?
Maybe they'll catch the people pooping downtown.
Well, it won't matter. What are they going to do to them?
They're going to find homeless people for pooping?
Yeah, but what are they going to do to them?
I don't know. Make a map like San Francisco?
What's that going to do?
Ugh.
Keep everyone out? Anyway, did you see that list of the top 10 surveilled cities in the world? Did you see that?
No.
The first, 6 are Chinese cities. London is... Okay, the first 4 are Chinese cities, but London is 5 or 6. And then the 2 or 3 below that are Chinese cities, and then Atlanta shows up at 9. But it's funny that it's Chinese, London. Chinese. London is right up there with the surveillance.
Well,
it's pretty freaky.
In Hong Kong, with the protests, aren't they tearing down a lot of cameras? Security cameras? Yeah, and it's my understanding that that's in fear of facial recognition software that runs through them. They don't want to be seen and implicated. And they all wear their masks, but they also want extra protection by taking those things out. Well, I know that they've been testing the social credit system. Is that in full swing, or are they still rolling it out?
I don't know if that's been implemented or not. I haven't heard any reports recently about it, but it's pretty wild, the escalated sense of surveillance that we live in the world. And it's too bad, because I'd like to travel and see things, but now I feel like I can't. TSA and surveillance state and controlled movement of peoples just makes it feel like I'm not allowed to go see Venice. Even though I'd love to see Venice. I'd love to see Italy, Rome, some of that really cool history stuff. I don't think I'm ever going to make it.
Well, even when I graduated high school, my mom and I talked about going on a trip with another mother and daughter, homeschoolers, and they wanted to go to Europe. And Mom and I just thought, I'd like to, but, London, and France are kind of going down the shithole.
Yeah.
Even back then, that's been... I'm old. Almost 10 years. So...
Wow, you're old.
Yeah, I'm old.
You're old now.
I was telling my sister the other day...
9/11 was 18 years ago.
I know. Tells you how young I was when that happened.
Yeah. 9/11 is for us Now, do you remember what were you doing that day, or were you just too young for that?
I'm just too young for that. I remember that my dad watched the video of the plane going into the tower on YouTube that day.
On YouTube?
Yes. I'm pretty sure. Maybe not YouTube.
YouTube didn't exist in 01.
No? Then he watched it somewhere.
No, YouTube came out in like 03.
Okay, well, he watched the video somewhere, and I remember that being a big deal to me because we didn't really watch videos online because the internet was garbage.
Yeah.
So...
Well, we had cable, and I remember watching it happen at 6 a.m. because we're in Alaska, and it happened at like 9 or 8 in New York City. But for us, it was 6 because everything's early for us. And I sat there all pie-eyed because I'm a teenager ready to go to high school, and I didn't care really because I was like, my dad's like, look, a catastrophe is happening. I remember him saying that.
You should get the cat out of here. He's going to jingle all up in the mic.
I was like, really, Dad, a catastrophe? Come on, cat. You're gonna ruin our audio. You've already ruined it. Thank you. And so I went to school, and the whole place was abuzz, and one of I feel like it was the principal at the time. He was a strange cat. I can't remember if it actually was the principal or not. I feel like it was. But one of the teachers, I won't say it was a principal because I'm not certain, but one of the teachers ended up getting a bunch of us kids in class, and we didn't have a cable signal to the school for everyone to watch. And so we actually ended up going to his house, which is just down the road. And I guess he got in trouble later on for that, because of course he would.
Yeah.
But I kind of appreciate it, because we got to see a bunch of the crazy stuff going on live TV, you know, a live broadcast TV. And I don't think we would have had the opportunity otherwise, so, like, I think it was a light slap on the wrist.
Well, there were a bunch of you.
And there was a bunch of us, yeah. It's not like anything real nefarious is going on. We just went to the nearest available TV, which happened to be his house.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty wild. But I was going to say, that's, for our generation, that's the event everyone remembers. Everyone knows exactly what they were doing that day and what happened that day.
Unless you were 7 years old.
Well, unless you were real young. I was...
If I... 7 or 8, let's say. I think it was 8.
01. I was in high school.
Yeah.
I was 17. Yep. Yep, there's a disparity in our ages, everyone, but that's fine.
Have you to get into...
Why is this cat driving? That's
because...
crazy. Go on. Oh, sorry, cat. He's fine.
He's looking at you like, how dare you?
I know, he's all offended because I grabbed him and threw him.
You did not throw him.
He's fine. You're fine.
I should not have put that collar on him the other day. I put the collar on the other cat, and I felt bad that he didn't have one.
Well, now we got 2 jingly cats.
We should probably edit all that, because that was pretty loud.
Yeah, I'll make it quiet.
Have you ever heard of people talking about kids drawing pictures of 9/11 before it happened?
No.
I never have either.
But there's some wild stories about children and like past lives out there.
Yeah, well,
if you want to dig into that subject, it's crazy.
I'd be interested to look into this, but I don't put any stock in it because I was told that by a girl that I was friends with growing up, friends in big quotes, and she always claimed the wildest stuff. And one of the things she claimed was that before 9/11, she was drawing pictures of the Twin Towers and an airplane going into them, and she'd never seen anything like that. Her mom was so shocked. And then later on, it happened. I'm just like, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Like,
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. But you do know about the predictive programming found in Back to the Future.
Yes, but this girl didn't even read Harry Potter until she met me around age 10 or 11, so I highly doubt she watched The Simpsons.
That Back to the Future thing is amazing. It's pretty wild how... And who knows what goes on, but it's pretty crazy the coincidences that are in Back to the Future when seen through the lens of 9/11.
Now, here's my question. Do you believe it's a matter of the elite control everything, and they put their plans into everything to show you? Or do you think it's a matter of God subtly controls even the most fallen people when they're making their shows and movies and TV shows, and is God's predictive programming?
Well, you could even take it one step further and eliminate the elite and God and say it's... Cat, stay down. It's probably going to be real loud. I'll quiet that down. You could say it's like very traumatic events in the future echo through the past. Have you heard of that? It like causes these waves through time, so we sense what's going to happen before it happens. It could be one of those. So there's your third option of weird.
But none of these things happen without God. So.
Well, that's true, but I kind of feel like God doesn't operate on those terms on purpose now, because it would... I believe that God does not operate on big grandiose terms like he did in the Old Testament, because it's too overt and causes more of a disingenuous relationship with him. A more genuine relationship comes out of faith without seeing.
Right, so everything's set in motion and just going now.
Yeah, I think it's the result of fallen man.
Yeah,
not the God result of God's guiding hands. Yeah. Certainly, God's at work in very subtle ways throughout it all. People died. He worked through that to bring people to Christ, on and on.
People are still miraculously healed.
Right. People are miraculously healed. Doctors are often very amazed by specific things of that nature.
We know someone that actually happened to.
Do we?
Mm-hmm. Kyle's dad.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, he had some heart problems and...
No.
Didn't he? Oh, he had cancer.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, he had, like, pre-cancer or whatever, and it was gone. Pretty amazing. I got that right?
Nope. But he had cancer and it didn't look good, and then he went to get checked out and it was all gone.
Wow, it's weird. I don't remember those details.
This was years ago.
It was a while ago.
And since he's not dealing with cancer,
Yeah, everybody stopped worrying about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, I believe he heals now, but it's subtle, it's in small ways, it's not overt and huge and publicized. If it were, then I don't think it's from him.
Well,
I distrust it.
I think that we are given glimpses of things to come. I get alarm bells, and I'm highly skeptical when people go on YouTube, and they're so easy to find. God has been speaking to me this week, and I just want you all to know, etc., etc. It's usually a woman. She's usually just she usually talks like that, and I can't. There's a reason in the Old New Testament, there's a reason women are not supposed to speak up in church, and it's because they can't help drawing attention to themselves and gabbing. And I just instantly took a dislike to a church that we used to go to, because the first time I went there, this emotional woman got up in front and said, I just want you all to know that God's speaking to me today, and I just felt like I had to come up here and share. I'm just like, oh gosh, just get this woman out of here. But that is to say, I do believe that people are given prophecy still, and I believe that we're given little glimpses of things to come, because I think we are either in the end times or headed that direction. But I'm highly skeptical of people who say that they've been given huge revelations in this day and age, because I think God gave us the revelation already.
Yeah. Yeah, I just feel like God is much more subtle now, and that's by design. Well, of course it's by design. It's God we're talking about.
Yeah, but...
And if it's, I'll just reiterate it, if it's overt and loud and obvious and publicized and on TV and on YouTube and people are talking about it, it's not God.
Yeah.
That's not how he works. Anybody who has talked to him and been...
Come down off the cross and show us.
Yeah, then they know that he's not overt and loud and obvious. Call him he. Probably shouldn't call God he, although Jesus is a he, so I don't know.
God is masculine.
Yes.
Anyone who claims God is a woman, I will slap in the face.
Yeah. There's,
I almost couldn't get past the first 5 minutes of Good Omens.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Yeah, it was dumb. They gotta challenge the paradigm. Also, it's a humorous, satirical piece of fiction, so...
Still.
Big old fat grain of salt. Who was I listening to or reading recently who, it was Jay Dyer. I was listening to Jay Dyer the other day, and he said that many people, too many people, most people, have an incorrect conception of God because it's really, really difficult to wrap your mind around what God is without preconception, like imprinting your personal experience as a human on God, because he's not human. He never was human, except for Jesus. But that's a different thing. Like, the concept of God is really, really difficult to conceptualize accurately, and until you can, it's nigh impossible to keep from putting your personal preconceptions onto him when you're trying to explain God and do an apologetic for God. And he's like picking apart all these different reasons for God and apologetics for God. And he's like, this is wrong because their conception of God is wrong. And I thought that really fascinating. Anyway, we got way into the rails there for a bit. We're not talking about 9/11 at all now.
Well, we were talking about 9/11 adjacent things.
Yes. So, that's a pretty good episode. I think that's good enough. I gotta get to bed.
We need to edit out all the cat jingling, so you better listen to this pretty carefully.
Well, I don't know. We'll keep some of them as long as they're not too loud. Right, cat? He's gonna bite me if I touch him.
Yeah, he's really... I want to pet him more often. He seems to be really attached to me, but if you put your foot near him and you don't pet him, you randomly get bit. I twitched my foot in my sleep the other night, and suddenly something was attacking me. So, I'm a little shy of petting him sometimes because he seems to think that biting is very affectionate.
It is. They're love bites. Everyone knows this.
The other cat doesn't do that.
That's true. I don't know. Cats.
I had to kick them both out the other night for fighting. They scared the kids.
Yeah. Cats are fun. So are dogs, but we can't have one until we have a yard.
Eat couch.
What?
Dogs eat couches when they get neurotic.
Dogs eat all kinds of things. Have you seen those photos of people's cars where a dog was locked in the car or whatever, and it just decided to start eating the steering wheel off, and the seats are torn down to the seat pans, and the dashboard is missing, and it's just the worst. I cry for those people. You basically have to total the car. You know, like... I
wonder what insurance companies do with something like that.
They total the car. They say, hey, we'll just buy you a new car. Sorry. And it won't be as good as this one because it's 10 years old.
Would insurance even cover dog ate the car?
I don't know. You'd have to look at your contract. It might. I mean, maybe not, because it's kind of your fault for leaving your neurotic dog in your car. Right? If there was no dog, your car would be fine.
Yeah.
You know, it's your fault. I don't know. Insurance is hard to figure out. Anyway, that's the episode. We're going to turn it off there. There is volumes more details about 9/11. We didn't do hardly any research. This is all from memory because it's a topic I've read extensively about, and you're good to bounce ideas off of. And you hate TSA, so that was a good little tangent.
TSA, stormtroopers.
Stormtroopers, yes. And NPCs. I encourage everyone to look into let's do this to wrap it up. 2 things. If you're going to look at 9/11, say you're a believer in the 9/11 Commission. You've read the 9/11 Commission cover to cover, and you believe every single thing the government told you. Nobody's read that thing cover to cover. It's like 600 pages or more. It's real thick. Anyway, 2 things you should look at if you want to become a 9/11 truther. Look at the stinking Pentagon and ask yourself why there were never any more video of, big air quotes, a plane going into that building. How does a plane make a little symmetrical hole in the wall? And why does the wall get reinforced like a month earlier with a remodel? The only wall that got reinforced. Yeah, watch that video that they released like a year later from some gas station nearby. It's the most surveilled building in the world. It's the most secure building on Earth. Mm-hmm. There's cameras everywhere. They are everywhere. And the government won't release any more pictures of the alleged plane that flew into it, right? Except for this really shoddy, like, not very good footage from some random hotel or gas station that's nearby. And it's like 3 or 4 frames, and you can see a flash of white, and that's it. And then an explosion. Like, there's no plane in that video. Anyway, look at that one, because that's a big smoking gun. And Building 7, just like we talked about. And I'm looking at my at the TV screen, and it says smoking gun right in front of me. I didn't mean to do that. But, yeah, look at Building 7. There's no reason for that building to come down. If you want the smoking gun, Building 7... and the Pentagon are it. The other 2, there's lots of debate about those. You can leave them out of the discussion. These 2 things, they make so little sense that you have to question the government in its official report. You have to. You just have to assume that they're lying about something. Something really, really, really big.
Well, the thing that seems to be is that every conspiracy theory eventually has self-disclosure. Could be 50 years down the line or something.
Yeah, it's true.
And they do it in such a fashion that people don't really care. Whoever is around of voting age at the time, they don't care because that wasn't their generation. That wasn't their government. Yeah,
that's a good point. 9/11, there's a ton of different ideas and stories. None of it has been confirmed, as far as I know. A big... somewhat recent theory is that there were no planes. People have done video analysis, really in-depth video analysis of those planes going into buildings, and they think they were actual digital images that were fed into the news wires. I watched one there.
Back in 2001?
Yeah. Well, think about what they say the government can do with their technology. They say they're always like 12 years ahead of the common people in technology. Always.
Then why haven't we seen a fake Golden Showers tape yet? Ha.
Well, somebody probably did make it a deep fake. Anyway, yeah, there's been some really deep video analysis on those planes going into buildings, and there's a lot of people who claim that there were no planes even.
So what is supposed to have happened to the planes?
What do you mean?
Well, people disappeared. People died. People didn't come home to their families.
Well, that's easy to do. I mean, if you're going to fake the whole thing, then you just send some spooks to find the people and disappear them.
Well, they went to the airport. They got on planes.
It's not hard to disappear people from airports either.
Well, where did what happened to the planes that the people got on is what I'm saying.
Oh, that's a good point.
People.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying I believe that theory, but that one has gained a lot of traction because the video analysis is spooky. If you watch those videos that like show over and over the plane like disintegrating into the building, it looks spooky. It doesn't look real. Like, it just vanishes into the building. And then there's an explosion. You know, it's weird looking. It doesn't look like two wings collided into windows, which is what it ought to look like. It looks odd. And then there's, recently I saw something about a silver ball. Like if you, and this is a somewhat old, theory, but you can actually find a video of this ball coming from the sky in one of the video frames. Like the news footage, you can see this ball come out of the sky and hit the building. And it like shows a trajectory. People have analyzed that video, and they've actually lined it up. You can see the trajectory of the ball going right through the building, and like knocking out central columns and whatnot. It's pretty wild.
That's easy to fake nowadays, though.
It's true, but it's an old news footage video from 2001.
How do they know, though?
Because it's raw footage. It's like old raw footage. And they've actually got, the one I watched a bit of just the other day, they actually had two different angles, supposedly. And they were comparing these two footages from two different news networks, two different cameras, supposedly, right? But they lined them up, and they actually analyzed them and figured it out that they were the same video. They were modified and put out to two different news studios, but they're the same video. The same angle and everything. Same camera is what I'm trying to say. With like a different digital background and like a skewed perspective. So it looks like two different like places for the camera, but it wasn't. It's pretty wild. So anyway, there's a lot of different theories and weirdness about 9/11.
My problem with a lot of these ones that claim there were no planes or blah 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 happened is thousands of people were actually in a place where they could have seen it.
Well, I'm sure that's covered. We'd have to look deeper into that.
Because you gotta think, there are a lot of people who are just going to accept the narrative because they have no imagination and they're not able to think outside a box.
I think there's plenty of interviews of eyewitness accounts of people who were there, looked nearby, and they never saw planes. They never saw them.
I haven't seen those interviews. I'm just saying...
There's a bunch of them, for what I understand.
You'd think that the people who saw that and then heard what the official story was would be more willing to go out there and try and make a stink.
Yeah, you would think so.
Considering they were there when people died, you know?
Yeah.
But, I don't know. It also bothers me that you can't even discuss things like this with some people because they hear something that isn't an official story and they just shut down.
Oh, I know. When you challenge people's paradigms, it's almost like a psychological effect where their brain just turns off. It won't listen. They just won't even entertain the idea because it's too shocking of a revelation, almost, you know? It's like the brain is protecting itself from this horrible thing that they don't want to face. Which I'm not sure where I get the ability to just entertain any old idea and then apply enough logic to it to accept it.
Reading fiction.
What? You think so?
I think so. I think people who grow up reading fantasy and reading, stuff like that, their brains work differently.
You think it fosters an ability to believe things other than just the presented, or even if it's artificial, but it's presented as reality?
Yeah, I've met people who their parents wouldn't let them read certain things growing up, and they were really sheltered, from certain movies, and they have no imagination, and they cannot think outside of what, they've been told is the truth. And they're quite cynical, and they're mocking, and they're impossible to talk to. So to go back around a little bit, do you think that we are headed to a place in our country before our country collapses, which I think will happen, I just don't know how soon. Do you think that we are headed to a place where we will turn into such a police state that we have to be protected from ourselves everywhere? That there will be actual checkpoints, to go to the grocery store, or before you even get to the airport?
I I don't think it'll ever get quite that bad. I think before it gets there, there will be rebellion and internal strife. You know, civil war, I guess is what you call it. I don't think we'll get quite that bad, because as far as I know, nowhere is quite that bad. You know what I mean? China is getting close, and they're in rebellion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They've reached the powder keg state where things are coming to a head, and Hong Kong ain't they're not having it.
I guess my problem, though, is that you've got to wonder how much of the population here is just so brain dead, though. Because people over there are literally holding up signs for Trump and waving our flag.
I know, isn't that wild?
And you have people here saying, look at my hijab. Isn't it so beautiful? It makes me feel powerful. And then you have women in Iran setting themselves on fire for getting 6 months for not wearing a hijab.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to say. I guess it would depend on how incredibly given over we are to the new religiosity, and what I mean by that is the transhumanism, the celebrity worship, the things they want people to worship instead of God and Jesus, and to a certain extent even old school religions, Islam, Christianity. It seems that humanity as a whole, but in particular the US, and I would imagine Great Britain and Europe and, you know, the developed world, not the highly religious, forgive me for saying somewhat backward ideologies that you see around the Middle East where they throw gay people off roofs or whatever. That's a backward way of thinking. It seems to me that they're guiding, the big evil they, is attempting to guide people away from Christ and away from God and away from their old school structured religions and into this new thing that it's centered around technology and just like gazing at a screen, i.e. a cell phone, and being sucked into the social media. It depends on how incredibly given over they are to that. If they get enough people to just love that stuff, how many people have an Amazon Echo in their house? Yeah, that thing's gonna control you.
We were just watching a video on some new Google device that is not going to spy on you for sure.
No, definitely not.
It's not going to inform on you.
Even though it uses facial recognition to give you customized data stream.
There will never be one of those in our house.
Never.
In fact, before we got started...
I don't even want Google Voice on my phone. I don't have it turned on. If I say, hey Google, nothing in my house answers me.
I accidentally turned that on my phone the other day. But I was telling you before we got started here, we need to put a piece of tape over your screen.
Yeah, I know. It's looking at us.
Well, I was sitting here nursing the baby, and
it's just thinking... right now. There's people in there.
Hi, FBI.
Hi, FBI.
I was going to say something. No, it seems to me that some of the... We were talking about this earlier. Some of the old creepy religions are coming back, and witchcraft is... You know, it's becoming a thing again, and people laugh, but you go online and you quickly see that there are a lot of feminists who are claiming to be witches or into Wicca.
Well, yeah, of course, those religions will be allowed to flourish, but Christianity, that's bad. That's bad news.
Yeah.
The nuclear family, that's terrible. How dare you? You know, you want to have a traditional relationship in your marriage, where the woman stays home and cooks and raises children and you go out and chop wood. No, that's bad. That's bad news. That's evil. But Wicca, now there's a great religion. But you know what? Let's have 2 lesbian couples practice Wicca and make sure their child who was born a boy gets raised as a girl. Yeah. Now that's the way to the future, because that makes sense. You know, that's going to be encouraged, and it's all going to happen through the cell phone.
Well, I accidentally stepped on some toes the other day. Somebody made a stupid post on... I saw it from my personal Twitter account. Some woman made a post which seemed to be a woman complaining about being called young lady. Because she said, how old do I have to be before people stop calling me miss and young lady? And I took that as, she felt condescended to by being called young lady, and mentioned that, well, I think it's nice when people call me ma'am, because I'm clearly married, and I have kids. I'm certainly, I'm obviously of a certain age and rank in life. And she liked that, but I made the huge mistake of saying older men are always going to call women young lady, even women their own age, because it's, nice, it's respectful, it's kind of a term of endearment. And that was just too far for her, because little did I know, this person who identifies themselves as she, they, is non-binary, so it makes them feel bad about themselves to be called young lady, despite the fact they present themselves as female. Like, ugh.
Boo-hoo. Well, I told you.
Again with the jingle, cat.
Yes, cat. I recognize your presence here. How about you go somewhere? Thank you. I'll bet you, and I'll just reiterate for the microphone, I'll bet you that every single post she makes, she's thinking about how she's non-binary. That's her whole identity. Well, that's where she finds her soul.
And that's all over the, quote, creative sphere of the internet. Is you'll come across posts, writers are always trying to promote each other. They're not making the New York Times bestseller list. They're all indie authors, and they want to support each other, and they all want to sell their books. But there's a sphere that just wants to promote LGBTQ. It can be absolute garbage. It can be porn.
I bet it often is.
Yeah, but they want to promote it because it's LGBT. Mm-hmm. And it's quite exclusionary. But...
I know, how dare they exclude all the straight people.
Yeah.
Okay, I tried to turn this podcast off earlier.
You're the one who kept talking.
Oh, my word. All right, we really are going to put it to bed there, because I got to go to bed. I got to get up early and get on a plane. Go talk to TSA for a moment.
You got to edit this.
I got to edit this podcast so it can release tomorrow on 9/11.
Probably really late.
I don't know why I do this when I start doing the end of the show, but I do this with my arms because I like to gesticulate a lot when I talk. Yeah, that's the show, ladies and gentlemen. Get on Twitter, Hinterlands Feed. Email us if you like at thehinterlandsmedia@gmail.com. Go to the website, www.hinterlandsmedia.com.
Retweet the post for this episode if you think we should kick California out of the union. I think it's a good idea. Leprosy.
Yeah,
leprosy
they
in
have
California.
leprosy. Yeah, they're clearly not sanitary enough to be part of our union any longer. They defecate in the streets. Just boot them out.
If you're in California,
how about we just sell them?
We're not talking about you.
Let's sell California to Mexico.
They can have it.
They can have it. And we can turn Washington State into the new cinematic mecca, as it were. We can move all of Hollywood, all the actors, everyone can move to Washington. Yeah, they can all go to Georgia. That's right. Yeah, good point. All movies are filmed there anyway. You know how many movies you watch where at the end it says thanks to the state of Georgia. Yeah. We just weed them out. Anyway. Okay, that's the show. Thanks, everybody. We're going to bed. Bye.
Bye.